I told my daughter, Sarah, not to bother with the attic. There's nothing up there but dust and old memories. But she insisted, warning me, "You don't want to know what's up there, Dad." Maybe I should have listened. But curiosity got the better of me. My name is John Matthews, and I'm 63 years old. I've seen enough in my life to know that secrets don't stay hidden forever. As I climbed the stairs to the attic, the creaking floorboards beneath my feet seemed to echo in the silence of the house. I hadn't been up there in years, not since my wife, Linda, passed away. The attic was filled with boxes and forgotten relics, old furniture, keepsakes, and family heirlooms. But today, something felt different. Something about the air was heavier, like there was something I wasn't supposed to find. I had no idea what I was looking for, but the pull to investigate was undeniable. It wasn't until I found the box, sitting alone on the far side of the attic, that my heart skipped a beat. There, in the corner, was a dusty, worn cardboard box with my name on it. John Matthews. It was written in a careful hand, a handwriting I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a moment, my breath catching in my chest. I hadn't put that box there. It had been years since I even thought about the attic. So why was it here? Why now? The box seemed out of place, like it didn't belong among the other forgotten things in this dimly lit room. I wiped away the dust, slowly pulling the flaps open. Inside, there was nothing but old papers and photographs, but one particular photo caught my eye. It was a picture of my family, Sarah, my late wife, and me, only it wasn't from any time I remembered. I hadn't seen that photo before. My heart sank as I realized that the people in the picture looked different than I remembered. What was going on? My daughter had warned me not to go up here, and now I knew why. The more I looked, the more questions began to surface. The attic had become a place for more than just old things. It had become a place for secrets. I stood there in the attic, staring at the box in front of me, the one with my name on it. I had no idea what to think, let alone what to do next. The air felt thick, like something was hanging over me. I wasn't sure if I should open it, or if I should just leave it alone and forget about it. But I couldn't. I had to know. The curiosity inside me had taken over, and there was no turning back. My hands trembled slightly as I carefully pulled the contents out. First, a stack of old papers. Some were faded, yellowing with age, and others were more recent, but none of them made any sense to me. I sifted through them, feeling a sense of growing unease. Then, I found the photograph. It was the same one I'd seen earlier, the one of my family. But now, as I looked at it closer, I noticed something even stranger. There was a woman in the photo who wasn't part of our family. She was standing next to me, her arm around my shoulders, smiling. I couldn't remember her at all. Who was she? How was she connected to my family? My heart began to race as I stared at the photograph, trying to make sense of it. The longer I looked, the more the pieces of my life seemed to shift out of place. I had never seen this woman before, but there she was, right in front of me. I felt like I was drowning in confusion. What was going on? Why was this hidden in the attic? I carefully placed the photo back in the box and began searching through the other papers. Most of them seemed like personal documents, receipts, letters, things I didn't recognize. Then I came across something that made my stomach turn, a letter with my wife's name on it. It was addressed to me, but the handwriting wasn't hers. It was someone else's. I opened it cautiously, not sure what I was about to read. The letter spoke of a secret, one that had been kept from me for years. It was a confession, a revelation of something I couldn't even begin to understand. My hands shook as I read the words, and the room seemed to close in around me. I had to know more. I had to understand what was happening. But as I stood there in the silence of the attic, I realized something else. I wasn't alone in this discovery. Sarah had known something. She had been hiding something from me. The warning she gave me about the attic wasn't just a random comment. She knew exactly what I was going to find. And now, I had to confront her. I stood there, holding the letter, my mind racing with questions. The room seemed quieter now, the weight of the discovery pressing down on me. I had to confront Sarah. She knew something, and I had to know what. The letter in my hand felt like a key, unlocking a door I didn't want to open. But now that it was ajar, I couldn't ignore it. I put the letter back in the box and made my way downstairs, my thoughts swirling. As I walked through the house, everything seemed different. The walls that had once felt like a safe haven now felt like they were closing in on me. I found Sarah in the kitchen, humming as she prepared dinner, just as she always did. She didn't notice me at first, so I stood there for a moment, watching her. She looked so calm, so normal, like everything was just as it should be. But I knew better now. I knew there was something she wasn't telling me. Finally, she turned and saw me standing in the doorway. She froze for a second, just long enough for me to see the flicker of hesitation in her eyes. "Dad," she said, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the tension in her voice. "Is something wrong?" I walked into the kitchen, not saying a word. I wasn't sure where to begin. My mind was still processing everything I had found in the attic, but one thing was clear: I couldn't keep ignoring the signs. I had to ask her. I had to get to the truth. "Sarah," I said, my voice steady but firm. "What do you know about the box in the attic?" Her face went pale. It was only a moment, but it was enough. I could tell that she knew exactly what I was talking about. She took a step back, as if she were trying to distance herself from the conversation. "What box?" she asked, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. I wasn't buying it. "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice sharp now. "I found it. And I found the letter." Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes darting around the kitchen as if she were looking for a way out. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, struggling to find the right words. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, there's something I should have told you a long time ago." I waited, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The truth was finally coming to light, and I wasn't going to let her hide behind her silence any longer. I stared at Sarah, waiting for her to continue, my heart racing as every second of silence passed. She seemed to struggle with the words, as though she was trying to figure out how to explain something that had been buried for too long. Her eyes avoided mine, and her hands fidgeted with the edge of her apron, a clear sign that she was nervous. I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear what she was about to say, but I couldn't back down now. "Dad, there's so much you don't know," she began, her voice trembling slightly. I could tell she was choosing her words carefully, as if testing the waters before diving into something deeper. "It's about the house, the money, and what happened after Mom passed." My pulse quickened. This wasn't just about the box or the photograph anymore. This was about something far bigger, something that had been hidden for years. "Go on," I said, my voice low but firm. Sarah hesitated before taking a deep breath and finally speaking. "I didn't want you to find out like this. I thought I could protect you from it, but it's too late now." She paused, swallowing hard. "Mom left behind more than just memories, Dad. She left us with debts, and I didn't know how to tell you." My mind began to race, trying to piece everything together. The photo, the letter, the strange warning. It was all starting to make sense, but it didn't sit right. I had always thought that Linda's passing had been hard enough, that there was nothing more to worry about. But now I realized how little I truly knew. "What do you mean, debts?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah finally looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and something else, fear maybe. "After Mom died, I found out that the house wasn't paid off. There were loans we didn't know about, and she'd been hiding it for years. When I couldn't handle it anymore, I made some decisions that I thought were best for everyone. I sold part of the property, Dad. I had to." My stomach churned as the weight of her words hit me. The house, the one I had spent so many years building, had been compromised in ways I never imagined. "You sold part of the house?" I repeated, the disbelief evident in my voice. "Sarah, why didn't you tell me? Why keep me in the dark?" She shook her head, her hands gripping the counter as she avoided my gaze. "I didn't want you to know. I thought you'd be angry, or worse, I thought you might have a stroke or something. I was stunned. It wasn't the answer I was expecting, but somehow, it made sense. Sarah was trying to protect me in her own way, but in doing so, she had pushed me further away than I ever thought possible. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she whispered, her voice breaking. I stood there, trying to process everything. My daughter had made decisions that affected me, our family, and I wasn't sure I could forgive her for it. But as I looked at her, standing there vulnerable and regretful, I realized that I had my own choices to make now. The secrets were out, but the damage had already been done. The real question was, how could I move forward from here? I stood in the kitchen, my hands shaking as I processed everything Sarah had just told me. The house, the money, the debts, none of it was something I had expected. My mind was racing, trying to find a way to make sense of it all. I couldn't believe she'd sold part of the property without telling me. How could she have made that decision on her own? I looked at Sarah, and I saw the regret in her eyes, but there was also something else there, fear. She was scared, but I was scared too. I had always tried to protect my family, to provide for them, but now it felt like I had lost control. Sarah, I said, my voice much calmer than I felt, why? Didn't you come to me for help? You should have told me about this. She swallowed hard, her eyes welling up. I didn't think you could handle it, Dad. After everything you've been through. I thought it would break you. Her words stung, but I understood where she was coming from. She had always tried to shield me from the harsh realities of life. But this time, she had crossed the line. I looked at her, my heart heavy. I'm your father, Sarah. I should have been a part of this decision. We could have worked through it together. She nodded, biting her lip as she fought back tears. I know I should have come to you, but I didn't know what to do. I was so overwhelmed. And then, I didn't want to disappoint you. Her confession made my heart ache. Sarah had always been the strong one, the one who kept things together. But now I realized she had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders without anyone to lean on. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. We've always been a team, I said softly. And we still are, no matter what. But you have to be honest with me from now on. I can't protect you from everything, and neither can you. Sarah nodded again, wiping her eyes. I promise, Dad. I'll never hide anything from you again. As I looked at her, I felt a shift inside me. The tension, the uncertainty, the anger, it was all still there, but something else was starting to grow. Understanding. Forgiveness. And the realization that, despite everything, we still had a chance to make things right. It wasn't going to be easy, but we would figure it out. Together. The days after that conversation were difficult. I tried to go back to my usual routine, but the weight of everything Sarah had revealed was still hanging over me. The house felt different, like it had become a place full of secrets and half-truths. I spent more time thinking about the past, the decisions I had made, the choices I had ignored. The cracks in my family were becoming more and more visible, and no matter how hard I tried to patch them up, they were still there. I couldn't stop thinking about what Sarah had said. She had been trying to protect me, but in doing so, she had kept me in the dark. The house was meant to be our home, a place where we could all feel safe and supported, but now it felt like it was filled with shadows. Sarah came to me a few days later, looking more composed than she had in a while. Dad, she started, her voice steadier than before, I've been thinking. I know I made mistakes, and I'm sorry for not being upfront with you. I should have trusted you more. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but I couldn't help but feel a little betrayed. It wasn't just about the house or the money, it was about the trust we had lost. It's not just about that, Sarah, I replied, my voice quiet but firm. It's about what you didn't tell me. You kept things from me because you thought I couldn't handle it, but I'm your father. I should have been the one to make those decisions with you, not left in the dark. She nodded, her shoulders slumping slightly. I know, Dad. I was wrong, and I won't make that mistake again. I could hear the remorse in her voice, and for a moment, I almost believed that everything would be okay. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. We couldn't just go back to how things were before. The trust that had been broken couldn't be repaired overnight. But maybe, just maybe, we could start rebuilding. I had to believe that, for both our sakes. I took a deep breath and looked her in the eye. It's going to take time, Sarah, I said softly. But I'm willing to try. We both need to work on this. Together. Sarah smiled faintly, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe we were on the right path. It wasn't going to be easy, but we could figure it out. One step at a time. I spent the next few days trying to adjust to the new reality that Sarah and I were navigating. The weight of the past few weeks hadn't left me yet, but there was a shift, something that made me feel like we could, perhaps, move forward. It wasn't going to be easy, but there was something about the way Sarah had spoken, the honesty in her eyes that made me think there was still hope. The house, despite everything, still felt like home, and I realized that the true foundation of it had never been the bricks or wood, it was the people inside. But as I sat in my study, thinking about what we talked about, something kept gnawing at me. Sarah had been honest with me about the house, about the debts, but there were still pieces of the puzzle missing. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than what she had told me. Late one evening, after dinner, I asked her to sit down with me again. Sarah, I began, my voice softer this time, I appreciate everything you've told me. But there's still something I need to understand. I know you've been trying to protect me, but are we really okay? Is there more to this than just the house and the debts? She hesitated, her fingers playing nervously with the edge of her glass. Dad, there's nothing else. Everything is on the table now. But I could see it in her face. There was something she wasn't saying. I wasn't sure what it was, but I needed her to say it. Sarah, I said gently, we can't move forward if we're not both honest. You don't have to protect me anymore. I can handle it. I just need to know the truth. She sighed deeply and looked at the floor. I could tell she was battling with herself, trying to decide whether to tell me more or to let it go. Finally she spoke. It's not just about the house, Dad. It's about everything we've been through, all the years of pretending that everything was fine. After Mom passed, I realized how much I had been carrying on my own. And I didn't know how to tell you about the decisions I made, the way I pushed everything aside to keep things together. I was trying to protect us, but maybe I ended up making it worse. Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. But then I realized that what she had just said was the hardest thing for her to admit. She wasn't just confessing about the house or the money. She was admitting how much she had been struggling, how much pressure she had felt to carry the family's weight on her shoulders. I leaned forward, trying to find the right words to offer her some comfort. Sarah, we've always been a family, even when it felt like we were falling apart. I understand now that you were just trying to hold it all together. And I appreciate that. But we need to be honest with each other from here on out. No more secrets. She nodded slowly, a tear slipping down her cheek. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like we were starting to rebuild, not just the house, but everything that had been broken between us. The following days felt strangely quiet. The tension that had been hanging over us seemed to lift, but the silence was almost deafening. It wasn't just the house. It was the weight of the unspoken truths that still lingered between Sarah and me. We were trying to rebuild, to move forward, but there were still parts of our past that needed to be addressed. The walls around us had been breached, but the cracks were still there, waiting to be filled. I spent the next few evenings alone, going through old photo albums, trying to process everything that had happened. I came across a picture of Linda and me, smiling together at a family gathering. We looked so happy, so full of life. It felt like a lifetime ago. I hadn't realized how much I had been holding on to those memories, how much I had been trying to keep things the same, even though everything had changed. The house, our family, the way we used to be, it was all slipping away, piece by piece. I looked at the picture again, wondering if I could ever recapture that feeling, that sense of peace and happiness. But then I thought about Sarah. She was trying. She was doing her best to make things right, even if it meant admitting to the mistakes she'd made. And that was something I could respect. When I saw her later that week, she seemed different. Not just in the way she carried herself, but in her eyes. There was a vulnerability there now, a softness that hadn't been there before. "Dad," she said quietly, "I know things aren't perfect, but I want you to know I'm doing everything I can to fix this. For both of us." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the house or the debts anymore. It was about the relationship we had, one that had been strained for so long, but was starting to heal. I nodded slowly, the weight of the moment sinking in. "I know, Sarah. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud of how hard you've worked to keep things together, even when it felt like everything was falling apart." She smiled faintly, but there was still sadness in her eyes. "I just wish I'd told you sooner. Maybe things wouldn't have gotten so out of hand." I reached out and placed a hand on hers. "It's not too late," I said softly. "We have time to figure this out." For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be ours to walk together. And maybe, just maybe, we would find a way to make things right again. Over the next few weeks, things slowly began to settle, though not without a lingering unease. Sarah and I had come to an understanding, but I could tell she was still carrying a weight on her shoulders. I saw it in the way she moved around the house, in the quiet pauses when we'd sit together in the living room, not quite knowing what to say. We had taken steps to rebuild our relationship, but the cracks were still visible, and they weren't going to disappear overnight. One evening, Sarah came to me while I was sitting on the porch, the cool evening air brushing past me. She sat down beside me, her expression serious. "Dad," she started, "I've been thinking about everything we've been through. And I know that things won't ever go back to the way they were, but I want you to know that I'm trying. I'm trying to be the daughter you deserve." I looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. It wasn't easy for her to admit this, and I could see how much it meant for her to make things right. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Sarah, we're not going to fix everything at once. It's going to take time. But what matters is that we're both here now, willing to make the effort." She nodded, wiping her eyes quickly, trying not to let the emotion show. I could see the guilt still lingering, but there was something else too, hope. It was hard for me to admit, but I was starting to feel the same way. The past had hurt, and there were still things that needed to be healed, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like I wasn't walking this path alone. "You don't have to carry this all by yourself, Sarah," I said, my voice steady but full of meaning. "We'll figure it out together." Sarah smiled weakly, her hands trembling slightly as she reached out to take mine. There was a quiet understanding between us now, a shift in the air that spoke louder than any words. We both knew that we had a long road ahead, but there was one thing I was sure of: we were in this together. That night, after Sarah went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, reflecting on everything that had happened. The house wasn't just a place where we lived anymore. It had become a symbol of everything we had endured and everything we still had to face. But as I looked around, I realized that the house was still standing, just like us. We were broken, yes, but we weren't beyond repair. We had the strength to rebuild, and that gave me a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. A few weeks had passed, and the changes in the house were subtle but noticeable. The tension that had once filled every room seemed to have eased, though the air still felt thick with unspoken truths. Sarah and I were learning to coexist in this new reality, one where our relationship was being rebuilt, but the foundation wasn't as strong as it once had been. Every now and then, I'd catch myself drifting back to memories of Linda, wishing she were still here to help guide us through this. But I knew that wasn't possible. It was up to Sarah and me now, and though it wasn't perfect, we were trying. One evening, after dinner, I found Sarah sitting in the living room, staring at the old family photo album. The album that had once been full of joy now felt like a reminder of everything we had lost. She looked up when I entered, her expression distant. "Dad, do you think Mom would have been disappointed in me?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. The question hit me harder than I expected. I walked over and sat down beside her, my heart heavy. No, Sarah, I said, placing a hand on her shoulder. I think she would have been proud of you for trying to make things right. It's not about being perfect, it's about learning from our mistakes and moving forward. Sarah nodded slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. I just wish I had done it sooner. I wasted so much time trying to keep everything together on my own. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but I also saw something else, a glimmer of hope. You're not alone, Sarah, I said, my voice firm. You never have been. We've been through a lot, but we're still family. We can still work this out. She smiled faintly, wiping her eyes. I hope so. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of everything still present, but not as heavy. The road ahead was uncertain, and I knew there would still be bumps along the way, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like we could handle whatever came our way. Together. The next morning, I found myself looking at the house differently. It wasn't just a home filled with memories. It was a place where we could rebuild, where we could start fresh. There would be challenges, yes, but I had no doubt that, with time, we would find a way to make it work. Sarah and I would face whatever came next side by side. And that thought, for the first time in months, brought me peace. The days that followed felt like they were moving in slow motion. I had been so focused on fixing everything that I hadn't realized how much time had passed. Things were still not perfect, but they were better. Sarah and I had learned to communicate in a way that felt more honest, more open. There were still moments of tension, of course, but the weight of the past was starting to lift. One afternoon, as I was sitting in the living room, I heard a knock on the door. It was a strange hour for anyone to visit, and when I opened it, I was surprised to see Sarah standing there. Her arms crossed, her face serious. Dad, she said, her voice calm but steady, there's something we need to talk about. I stepped aside, motioning for her to come in. What's going on, Sarah? I asked, sensing the change in her tone. She looked at me, then down at her feet, as if searching for the right words. It's about the house, she said quietly. There's something I didn't tell you about the money, about what happened after Mom passed away. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I need you to know. The air between us felt thick, and I could tell this wasn't going to be an easy conversation. What is it? I asked, my heart starting to race. Sarah took a deep breath before speaking again. I've been paying off the debts by myself. I've been using the money I got from the sale of part of the property to keep things afloat. I didn't want you to know because I didn't want to worry you, but it's getting harder. I've been struggling to keep it all together. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had no idea Sarah had been carrying this burden on her own. It made everything we had gone through seem so much heavier. I took a step forward, my voice shaking as I spoke. Why didn't you tell me, Sarah? You don't have to do this alone. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with the same vulnerability she had shown me before. I didn't want to disappoint you, Dad. I didn't want you to think I couldn't handle things. But now I realize that we need each other. I can't keep going like this. Her words hit me harder than anything she had said before. I knew she had been trying to protect me, but I hadn't realized how much it had cost her. I put my hand on her shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. You've done more than enough, Sarah. You don't have to carry this alone. We'll figure it out together, just like we always have. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. It was then that I realized that, even in the hardest moments, we were still family. And that was all that really mattered. As the weeks went by, the weight of everything we had gone through seemed to lessen, but the journey wasn't over. I had learned to forgive, not just Sarah, but myself as well. I realized that it wasn't about the house, or the money, or the mistakes we had made. It was about the bond we shared, the family that, despite everything, was still standing. One evening, Sarah and I sat together in the living room, the silence between us no longer uncomfortable but peaceful. It felt like we had found our rhythm, our way of being there for each other. Dad, she said, her voice quiet but certain, I think we've both learned a lot through all of this. And I know it hasn't been easy, but I want you to know that I'm grateful. For you. I looked at her, surprised by the emotion in her voice. She had always been the one to hold things together, the one to keep us on track, but now, she was the one asking for help. You don't have to thank me, Sarah, I said, my voice steady. We've both been through a lot, and we're still here. That's what matters. She nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. It wasn't the first time she had thanked me, but this time, it felt different. It felt like she finally understood that she didn't have to face everything alone. And neither did I. The following weekend, Sarah and I decided to tackle the house together. We started going through old boxes, sorting through papers, cleaning out the attic. It wasn't just about organizing the house. It was about reclaiming what had been lost, about making this place feel like home again. As we worked side by side, I realized how much we had come to depend on each other. There was no longer any distance between us, no walls we needed to break down. We were rebuilding, not just the house, but our relationship, our trust. By the end of the day, the house felt lighter, the air easier to breathe. I looked at Sarah, a sense of peace settling in my chest. We did good, I said, a smile tugging at my lips. She smiled back, her face filled with a sense of accomplishment. We did, she agreed. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And that was enough. For the first time in a long while, I felt like we were finally heading in the right direction. Together.